Hello and welcome to at Fred Asquith on Film. I should really get some theme music, shouldn't I? What would it be? That's Pearl and Dean. I could just rip it off, then I'll get sued. Then no more podcast. Anyway, welcome to Fred Asquith on Film. At Fred Asquith on Film, TikTok, Instagram. I got inquired as to why it's called at Fred Asquith on Film on TikTok and Instagram. And it's because if people search for my personal profile, then my podcast will come up and then they'll be obliged to follow both. Do you know what I mean? If I just call it Fred on Film, who the fuck's Fred? Who the fuck's Fred and why should I care? Oh, he's a very, very esteemed and successful and respected online comedy content creator. I guess I have to give not one of his accounts a follow, but both. That's the thought process. Do you know what I'm saying? Today, we've got a super fun episode and I'm going to crack on because I don't want to go over an hour. I've always pledged to you I will never go over an hour with this podcast. I hate podcasts that feel like fucking War and Peace. So I will try and keep this under an hour. And if you're listening to this and you see that the runtime is over an hour, something's gone terribly wrong. Like terribly, terribly wrong. Today we're going to talk about a new report on Gen Alpha versus Millennials and Gen Z and their theatre-going preferences. We're also going to talk about Sorry Baby, which is a movie that I saw this week, which has been out for fucking ages, but I just want to touch on it. Highest to Lowest, which is a new Denzel Washington film, which has come out on Apple TV. The Wuthering Heights trailer, the 28 Years Bone Temple trailer, and looking ahead to the week and weeks coming, which are all very exciting. So this is a really exciting poddy, and I love this. This is the quintessential Fred on Film poddy. By the way, it's called Fred on Film in the context of this poddy. You know, I don't have to keep calling myself Fred Asquith. But in the wider world, it's at Fred Asquith for the reasons aforementioned. So this is a quintessential Fred on Film episode because we've got a really nice blend of news, crucially news that I feel able to and excited to talk about. It's not like Marvel where I feel a bit detached and blah, blah. And also a couple of reviews. So here we fucking go. So as well as the things that I've mentioned, I want to start with something that's been reported by the Wall Street Journal in regards to OpenAI diving into the movie industry. Now, I haven't gone and accredited this story. So after I record this, I saw this on Threads and it said courtesy of the Wall Street Journal. Okay. So if that person was lying, then they're wasting all of our time. And I'm going to go on and when I'm editing this, I'm going to take out this bit when I click my fingers, if it's incorrect, okay? Right, so if we're still here, that means that I've gone and checked that this is correct. So, OpenAI, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, have confirmed that they're helping make an AI-generated movie called Critters. And I saw this on Threads, and there was an accompanying picture of like a kind of a Monsters Inc.-looking monster animated movie. So it's not going for realism. That's crucial, I guess. The goal is to finish production in 9 months. The budget is $30 million. The plan is to debut the film at Cannes. And by the way, Cannes is a entity that have only really just got used to showing movies that are going to go to streaming. Never mind a movie that's co-produced by OpenAI. And it's, I just think that's a bee's nest. Is that what they call it? It's a wasp's nest of fucking issues. You're opening a can of worms there. Paddington 3 writers have penned the script. I don't even know what that means because Paddington 3 is not out, right? Is it? Paddington 3 isn't out as far as I know. It's just been Paddington 2 and obviously Paddington 1. Paddington 3. Oh, Paddington in Peru. Wow, I'm so sorry. That really passed me by, Paddington 3. I guess that's because it wasn't as loved as the others. Yeah, 6.6 on IMDb. Yeah, fair enough. I guess that's why it passed me by. Well, anyway, Paddington 3 have penned the Critters script. They're now casting voice actors. Art, this is literally quote-unquote what it says. Art will be fed into ChatGPT 5 and other image models. So I guess that means that GPT-5 is going to be extrapolating on like designs and then expanding on that and creating scenes off the back of that. I don't know how they're going to sync that with the voiceover recordings. I don't really know. It feels like a PR stunt for OpenAI. Like, it feels more to me like, when you see like a live football show. Why am I speaking like I've just landed on Earth? You know, like when you see a live football broadcast on like Sky Sports or something, and it'll say like powered by Lucozade, right? But it's not. Lucozade have done fuck all to this to the broadcast of that game. It's just that like I used to work at a radio station back in Scarborough that's now shut, and I used to have to sell the advertising slot that led into the news or something. And it was always some like local fucking bullshit business. So it was like, Yorkshire Coast Radio's 6 o'clock news, powered by John's Bakery, powered by Trotter's Butchers, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, point being, they obviously had no fucking hand on the news whatsoever. I think that's what this is like. I think it's like powered by OpenAI, ChatGPT, but really how much of it is going to be, I think it's more like, yes, they will use AI to make the film, but is it going to be actually plugging shit in ChatGPT? I might be wrong, but either way, makes me want to just bring up, just coax up all my organs like a giant fleshy fur ball. Let that all fall out of my mouth, and then flop down dead like Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is me done. I do not want movies being produced for 30 million that have been spat out by ChatGPT 5. Okay? And also, ChatGPT 5, don't get too big for your fucking boots, because you can't even draw me a fucking flowchart when I ask for it. You're wank. Oh, excuse me, can you... I tried to get it to draw me this bracket for a pool tournament that I was doing for my stag do. It was drawing fucking lines everywhere. It was like the fucking Enigma code. I need to get fucking Stephen Hawking in there. What's his name? Alan Turing in there to decode what it made. Anyway, now, moving on. So this is a report on Gen Alpha's... This is a new news report, by the way. I'm completely changing topic here. I'm just going to get this up. Sorry. Gen Alpha report on cinema attendance. Here we go. National Research Group. This is a report on the Gen Alpha cinema viewing habits versus millennials. What's it? Gen Z, millennials. So Gen Alpha are the youngest. So anything. Gen Alpha are anyone born after, 2013 or something absolutely sickening. Anyway, really, really young fuckers, basically. And then next up, Gen Z, then millennials, then Gen X, is it? Yeah, Gen X. And they don't go higher than that to boomer. But anyway. And basically, the headline of this report is that Gen Alpha, Gen A, are arguably, even according to the data, more committed to the cinema experience than some of their elders. So listen to this. 59% of Gen Alpha enjoy watching movies in theatres as opposed to home. That's 14 points higher than millennials at 45%, and higher than Gen Z at 48% and Gen X at 46%. So those other three generations are actually pretty similar. And then Gen Alpha's up at 59%. And why is this? Because apparently Gen Alpha have low attention spans, but only 11% of Gen Alpha, which are aged 6 to 12, confirms here, cite difficulty focusing as a barrier to seeing movies. So whether or not they do have shorter attention spans than the older generations, they don't see that as an obstacle to them enjoying movies. So maybe that's their own perception of their own shite attention span, or maybe that's actually true. They say the biggest barriers for them going to theatre are ticket costs, needing adults to accompany them. The significance of this is that we see the cinema industry as dying, and we see the advent of social media and the fracturing of the media landscape as being the one nail in the coffin of the cinema industry. But it turns out that Gen Alpha maybe appreciate the cinema experience. So another piece of data, preferred run times for each individual generation. Gen Alpha, 2 hours, 7 minutes. They want an over 2 hour movie to Gen Alpha. I mean, how the fuck are they gauging this? Gen Z, 2 hours 14. Millennials, 2 hours 14. Gen X, 2 hours 10. I don't know why anyone is specifying they want an over 2 hour movie. I know it's not massively over 2 hours, but like For me, preferred runtime, 1 hour 45. Absolutely perfect. 90 minutes feels a bit too quick sometimes, especially with credits. 1 hour 45, get in, get out. Why would that not be the preference of everyone? Anyway, 38% of Gen Alpha say my friends are talking about it is a top reason to see movies in theaters, which is much lower for all the other generations. So, and also, over 60% of Gen Alpha prefer seeing movies opening weekend to avoid spoilers. 58% prefer watching in a busy theater. This is 59% for Gen Z and 26 and 19 for Millennials and Gen X. So basically, the older you get, the more grumpy you get. We know this, but also the older you get, the less you might actually want the quintessential cinema experience of like a busy cinema with loads of fuckers in there being on their fucking phones. So Gen Alpha, 65% want premium large formats, IMAX, Dolby, premium and large formats, sorry. 54% are interested in 3D and VR. 54% want special effects 4DX. 53%. Basically, there's just loads of data to suggest that Gen Alpha, according to the responses of the report, and I haven't got the numbers of how many Gen Alphas and Millennials and whatever they actually surveyed, according to that data, appreciate the cinema experience more than their elders. And the key takeaway for me is that Gen Alpha are clearly looking for something that they can't get at home. I think a really good point that I read in relation to this report was that when we were growing up, even millennials, the home viewing experience was still seen as a novelty. Do you remember like back in the day before I was alive and probably many of you, back in the day, like when VHS or Betamax or whatever the fuck was first was invented, that was like, oh my God, I can go get like Jaws and watch it at home, and like that must have been insane. That kind of sentiment still existed when we were growing up, like going down to Blockbuster, or even when I was a bit older, getting something from Love Film and watching it at home. Like stuff being available to watch at home. When DVD came out, and my first DVD I bought was Spider-Man, and I think I bought Master and Commander the same year. Like that was only like 2003 or something, and so it was still a novelty. All these like incremental improvements in the home viewing experience. TVs got better. We moved to Blu-ray. And so this home viewing experience was like special to even younger generations or youngish generations like millennials. However, Gen A have now been brought up in a world that is entirely built around a home viewing experience, whether it's on your TV or your phone or both at the same time. And so actually, the novelty for them is outside of the home. And you might think, well, Gen Alpha don't want to go outside of the home because they're locked on their phones. Well, this data says otherwise. This data says that if you give them a compelling reason to do so, they will want to go to the cinema to see a premium large format, something that their friends are talking about, blah, blah, blah. That is mega exciting. And that speaks to everything that Nolan and Coogler and Peele are trying to do, which is commit. And you know, other auteurs like Gerwig and Tarantino and PTA, trying to commit to the cinema experience, and in some cases commit to literal film, literal celluloid. What are Gen Alpha consuming at home? They're consuming a very, very fractured media landscape. They're consuming within their algorithmic bubble, within their echo chambers of whatever their nichest of nichest interests are. You know, it's not just like they're consuming stuff about football, they're consuming stuff about their specific club or their favorite player or whatever. They're not just consuming stuff about anime or about movies. They might be consuming about anime or a specific subset of anime. Like, the algorithm is so tight now that it's actually quite hard to get out of your bubble. And so the movies that are going to perform well are the movies that create a cultural conversation that breaks through the algorithmic bubbles and makes kids feel like they're going to be part of a movement. And that's something that I believe, like, intrinsically humans are always going to want. However much we can consume our own media in a perfectly served and perfectly portioned way according to our own very specific niche interests, people still want to be part of a community, and they want to feel like that community is bigger and bigger and bigger and as big as it can be. And we saw that with Barbenheimer. People might have seen Barbenheimer purely because of the Barbenheimer movement and not necessarily because they wanted to see both movies or even one of the movies. People love being part of a club, and the bigger the club, the bigger the FOMO. So if you tell a Gen Alpha that this is a cultural conversation, this is big, this is a moment, this is happening, this is a community, come join. Even with those things about people filming the reactions in the Minecraft cinema recently, or the reactions in No Way Home Spider-Man a few years ago. These are all new things about the cinema going experience, but they are good things for the industry. That's what a Gen Alpha cannot get at home. Because all they get at home is, like I say, a perfectly prepared dose of their algorithm. And then furthermore, as we've seen with this data, make it something you can't see, you physically can't see at home. So even if it is a cultural conversation like K-pop Demon Hunters, that is on Netflix, right? They've tried to release it in cinemas, get a bit of money, blah, blah, blah. But make it something that the very format can't be reproduced at home. So it's not something that you just want some 4K streaming of. It's IMAX, it's 70mm. It's, in the case of One Battle After Another, VistaVision. I know that's a 15, so it doesn't count for Gen Alpha, but you know what I'm saying. It's a cinematic experience. It's Dolby Atmos. It's something that you cannot reproduce at home unless you're extremely rich. Basically, this report really, really encouraged me, and I'm super duper excited about what it means for the cinema industry moving forward. And I truly believe that as a format, as like a form of entertainment, and as a way to spend your time, spend your money, I truly believe that cinema is going to stand true as one of the unique things to do amongst, like, I mean, it might sound quite shit, but like theme parks, you know, like maybe we don't want movies to feel like theme parks, but that's not what Christopher Nolan's doing. I know he's making movies that he feels passionate about and that he would consider like intellectual and blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he's committing to the IMAX, and so is Denis Villeneuve and all this, there is an element of an event in that, right? And that is akin to theme parks. Like, I do think that cinema can stand strong as a way to spend someone's time in the long run, as opposed to the small screen. And it fascinated me thinking about like how, like because Gen Alpha have been born literally with a 6-inch screen strapped to their face, cinema is actually incredibly amazing to them. You know, like back in the day when it was like, I imagine taking your kid to the cinema in the 70s, you're like, oh my God, like a giant screen. We don't even have one of these screens at home. And you think that might change because Gen Alpha have screens at home. But actually they're so conditioned to the small screen that it might be equally amazing to be like, oh, fuck yeah. Anyway, speaking of this form of entertainment being entertaining, I tried to watch Highest to Lowest, which is the new Denzel Washington Spike Lee film, which is on Apple TV. It's an adaptation of another movie. I think it's called High and Low, or it might be High to Low. And apparently Denzel Washington brought this script to Spike Lee to make, which makes sense because a lot of it is about the nature of social media, technology, power, legacy, inheritance, like Denzel Washington thinking about like what is he going to give to his kids and things like this. And I fucked it off. I'm not going to do a full review of this. I fucked it off halfway through, and I've heard that the second half is better than the first half, but I'm going to stay strong on the fact that I fucked it off because I thought the first half was beguilingly bad. Like, this is big words, almost megalopolisly bad in some ways. Long-time listeners will know that I think Megalopolis is the worst film ever made. In some ways, I think that this was as bad as that. Not in every way. I don't think it's catastrophically bad on all levels like that film. But there's a strange televisual style to it that I couldn't put my finger on. There's a weird, like, plinky-plonky, almost like orchestral score going on throughout the entire first half in the background that doesn't seem to match up with the scenes that it's scoring. Very, very strange. Can't describe it very well. Go and watch it if you want to get an idea of it. There's some legitimately bad acting, and there's some legitimately bad accents. So the lead roles in this are played by Denzel Washington and Jeffrey Wright, and they're not bad. Jeffrey Wright's certainly not bad. I think some line deliveries by Denzel are pretty bad, but he's obviously Denzel. He's obviously generally very good in it. But the supporting actors are actually legitimately bad at times. I don't know what's going on with the direction there. And you know what? I don't want to waste your time just like I feel like it wasted my time. Basically, I fucked it off. I couldn't believe that a Denzel Washington Spike Lee project had such what felt like a shambolic opening. I don't know if I'm missing something there. I don't know if the second half is so transcendently incredible that it makes up for it. I don't know if I'm completely wide of the mark here. But highest to lowest, I thought the first half was tragic and I turned it off, and I don't normally do that. I'm now going to move on to a quick review of Sorry Baby. Sipping my juice there, spilled it all over myself, all over the sofa. Going to have to get a new sofa. Brilliant. Sorry Baby is a movie by Eva Victor, who is a comedian, sort of a kind of like a mid-tier comedian personality in America. I see her as like a lockdown comedian. I saw a lot of her memes during lockdown. She's done some stuff on Comedy Central. This is a passion project for her. Passion project, is that the right word? I don't know, but she's written it, directed it, and she's starring in it. Eva Victor. And the synopsis is, she plays a character called Agnes. The synopsis is, something terrible happened to Agnes, but life goes on for everyone else. That's the log line, I should say, not the synopsis. Basically, the something terrible specifically is sexual harassment and rape. There is a depiction of Agnes's processing of being the victim of sexual harassment / rape, and that's the movie, right? And so, you know, it's not like a film with plot or anything. It's basically exploring those themes. It's extremely effective. I've written some notes down for this. We went to see it, me and my darling wife, the other day, and we came out pretty affected by this. It's a well-balanced movie that's got lots of really strong notes of comedy and really, really insightful, intellectual, deep, character-driven exploration of these themes. And it explores them in a tactile way that opens your eyes to the nature of sexual harassment and rape after the fact, which is not something I can remember being portrayed like this in a movie. I think there are portrayals of this topic, obviously, but I think I haven't quite seen such a patient depiction of the aftermath of being a victim of something like that. And I found that really evocative to watch. And it's about how the institutions and the law itself is stacked against those victims. It's effective and insightful, as I said. It explores how something might seem pretty disposable to the perpetrator, to the criminal, and entirely indelible to the victim. It explores the nature of belief and proof. It puts you... I thought it made a really interesting choice. This film came out a while ago, by the way, so if you don't want to hear spoilers, it didn't have a wide release, please do turn off briefly. But to say that it puts you, the viewer, in a position of believing your protagonist without having seen the crime, which is really, really effective exploration of the nature of belief and proof, which is explored in a later scene in a courtroom. Basically, the movie chooses not to show you the crime, the rape, right? And that's a brilliant choice because you know, as an audience member, that it's true. You know that this happened. You're with this character every step of the way, and yet you are in the position of like a judge or a jury, and so it's kind of showing you the struggle a victim has to go through in order to overcome that burden of proof by putting you in that position. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's a difficult film. I'm obviously not going into much detail on like cinematography and like more technical elements, or like, you know, my experience of watching it from like a, I don't know, it's not the right word to use, but like an entertainment point of view. It's not the type of film to review that way, so I'm not going into a full kind of deep dive review. Another movie that explored that topic actually in a completely different way was Promising Young Woman, directed by Emerald Fennell, and she was also the director of Saltburn. Speaking of which, the next topic I'd like to discuss is the new trailer for Wuthering Heights. So this caused a bit of a stir last week. Wuthering Heights, obviously an extremely famous book written by Emily Bronte. I get mixed up with the Brontes. Is it Emily? I've even fucking read it, I'm about to come on to say. It's Emily Bronte. And this is a new adaptation of that book. There's been many adaptations over the years, which we'll come on to. The trailer dropped, and it's like a 50 Shades of Bronte, like sexual adaptation of Wuthering Heights, starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Basically, this caused a massive stir and it brought around a really interesting discussion around adaptations, and especially adaptations of classic books. Because like I say, this trailer was really sexual. And if you want an example of that type of vibe, then obviously go watch Saltburn, which seems like everyone watched in the winter of 2023 or whatever it was, when it was on Prime. And Promising Young Woman, also directed by Emerald Fennell, who has directed this adaptation of Wuthering Heights. That's clearly her bag. However, the discussion fell down the line. As soon as the trailer dropped, the discussion fell down the line of, do we, you know, is this a fair adaptation of this book to make it this sexual, versus this is an exciting thing that I want to go see. So I read the fucking books, right? I read all the fucking books, sipping my juice. And by the fucking books, I mean the classics, the romantic classics. And I read them on purpose. When I was about 16, I used to work in a theatre. Not a cinema. Actually, there was a cinema in there as well, but I used to work in a theatre. And so you had what this thing called gallery watch, which was that when the play was on, there was one person designated to sit literally on the floor in the gallery and the gallery meaning the space outside the doors entry into the theatre. It's quite a small theatre, so there was only one like landing outside the doors. You would sit in the gallery and make sure no one comes out, or if they do, make sure, do they know where they're going to the toilet, blah, blah. And so you would just have hours sat outside with muffled sounds of a play going on inside, you know, Christmas Carol or fucking The Mikado or something. And you just have nothing to do. And they wouldn't even give you a fucking chair. You'd just be sat on the floor, arched back like a question mark, reading a fucking book is what I chose to do. I chose to read books. Nowadays, you take your phone up there and have a flick around, but back in the day, phones were not that fun. So I'd take a book up. And so during that time, I was like, right, I'm going to use this time and read all the romantic classics so no one can talk to me about them and me not know what I'm talking about. And I'm really glad in this instance that I did that. I read Jane Eyre, Tess the D'Urbervilles, all the fucking Brontes, all the Jane Austens, Pride and Prejudice. Wuthering Heights was one of the ones I read. So I feel like I'm in a decent position to talk about this. Oh, and also, by the way, I've been to the Wuthering Heights, like actual Wuthering Heights, the actual building that the fucking book was based on. I've walked there, so I know about this shit, right? Enough to talk about it. There was also a previous adaptation starring Tom Hardy in 2009 for ITV. There was also 1992 with Juliette Binoche and Ralph Fiennes. 1970, 1949. This book was written in 1802, I think. Point being is, I don't think it's heresy to have a new, off-the-wall, creative, different, personal, idiosyncratic interpretation of a classic book. Reason being is because I saw loads of comments being like, this is not faithful to the book, blah, blah. Well, we've had a lot of faithful adaptations of this book. We've had at least 10 faithful adaptations of this book. And we also have the book. And I put it like, you can do something different with this. Just like Baz Luhrmann doing Romeo and Juliet and putting it in modern day with Leo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. Just like Batman being directed by Tim Burton, Chris Nolan, and the new guy who I've fucking forgotten his name. You know who I mean. The Robert Pattinson one. These are all different tones of a classic character. You might say it's crazy to equate Shakespeare with Bronte, with Batman. I think it's exactly the same. I think we have these everlasting, evergreen characters, these evergreen stories that you can continue to iterate on and interpret in different ways as time goes on, depending on the time period, depending on what's in the zeitgeist, depending on the culture at that time. I think that this is a reasonable way to adapt Wuthering Heights because I think the original book and all the romantic novels from this era have an element of romantic and sexualized-ish fantasy about them, right? The book, in my opinion, the book is full of sexual tension. You know, Heathcliff is a young boy. He goes off and comes back, and he's like a brooding, angry, wolf-like man. He's described as, right? That is there's an element of sexual fantasy to that. Just like, oh, you're in the middle of the moors, these windy, bleak moors, and this man comes home and he's the most attractive man you've ever seen, and you're gonna rip his clothes off. Right? That's not what the book is about. But to me, that is the subtext of the book, because I feel like when those books were written, it wasn't the time or the culture or the style to be extremely sexualized, but the undertone of all these books is sexual tension. If you read Tess of the D'Urbervilles as well, there's so much sexual tension going on there. And so I see it as a reasonable interpretation of the book, given the context of the era it was written in, to ramp up the sexual tension. That's my opinion. Needless to say, Jacob Elordi is a very attractive man. And Margot Robbie is a very attractive lady. And so this is going to get massive amounts of traction because it's going to generate cultural conversation. And going back to the Gen Alpha report that we spoke about at the start of this episode, this is case in point of maybe not for Gen Alphas because it's going to be probably a 15, it looks like. But this is case in point of a movie that is going to generate cultural conversation and maybe feel like a urgent film to go and watch, especially when you see these actors that from the writer-director of Saltburn, boom, you're in. Like, this is going to be a film that is worth going to see for probably quite a large audience. You know, Margot Robbie's got a big draw now, and Jacob Elordi is a massive heartthrob. He's almost getting the Timothée Chalamet treatment from about 5 years ago. You know, like, I remember my cousin 5-6 years ago when she was like 15, 16 or something. She was just obsessed with Timothée Chalamet while he was on his way up, you know, and he hadn't been in anything massive by that point, but he was growing. That's the place Jacob Elordi's in right now. Like, he is just such hot stuff. And them two together, with the maker of Saltburn at the helm, I think is going to push this quite far. So let's fucking go. I'm in. Also, another note on a trailer that I saw, 28 Years Bone Temple. The very rapid follow-up to 28 Years Later, I think looks sick as fuck. Go watch this trailer. If you haven't seen 28 Years Later, probably don't listen to the next 20 seconds. But basically, Ralph Fiennes' character is in this trailer a lot. He was, in my opinion, the best part of 28 Years Later. And this looks grimy, this looks grisly, this looks scary, this looks cool. Everything that I got from 28 Years Later, which was a movie I rated 4 stars on Letterboxd. Go check me out on there. And I'm buzzing for this. This has got a different director now. Who is the new director? Nia DaCosta. And Nia DaCosta is known for Candyman, The Marvels. So Nia DaCosta's had, you know, a decent start to her career. And now at 35 years old, she's been handed this really exciting project. And handed is the wrong word. She's earned this really exciting project. And I'm absolutely buzzing to see another take on this universe that isn't Danny Boyle's. Because I am a little secret fan of 28 Weeks Later, which was directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. I thought that was a great movie. I don't think it was quite up there with 28 Years or 28 Days, but I thought it was a great movie. And so I'm excited by other interpretations of this universe. I'm also excited by the fact that it's so soon after 28 Years. I like it that they committed to both movies. Fair enough, the first movie didn't perform as well as they wanted at the box office, but I think commit to this. Like, don't do a Daniel Craig Bond era. Don't do a what the Marvel are doing now and just like undercommit to the narrative arc that you had planned. Like, go for it. Bring out 28 Years, bring out Bone Temple the next year. Like, tell us the story you genuinely wanted to tell, not the story that was dictated by the box office numbers. Not the story that was dictated by the reactions, like, oh, they liked this character, they didn't like that character, blah, blah, blah. Although I'm sure they'll feed that into the marketing a little bit. Like, you know, we all liked Ray Fiennes' character, so he's front and center of the marketing. But anyway, I'm excited for 28 Years Bone Temple. In the weeks coming up, we've got some really exciting reviews coming. So I reckon I've absolutely smashed that. What are we on? Yes, haven't gone over an hour. In the weeks coming up, there are some exciting reviews. I'm going to review A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which is coming out 19th of September. And I'm going to go see it this Thursday, the 11th. So I'll have a review of that. That's the Colin Farrell, Margot Robbie. Speaking of Margot Robbie, kind of heartwarming movie that seems to be coming out. It's definitely coming out. I'm also going to maybe review The Long Walk and or Spinal Tap 2, which are both out this week as I speak. So I'm going to try and catch those this weekend so I can review them for you next week. But I'm going to miss Conjuring Last Rites, although it has done brilliant at the US box office, I hear. It's over 40 million at the box office. And so I think it's Warner Brothers now have 8 films at the box office this year that have all exceeded 40 million US openings, which is a brilliant achievement. Only the second studio ever to do that. But I'm going to miss Conjuring Last Rites just because I'm out of touch with the Conjuring series. I never really liked it anyway. I'm happy if you're all enjoying it. Conjuring fans, go and enjoy it. I'm also going to miss Downton Abbey. What's it called? What's it called? I need to find the fucking title of this. I think it made me laugh. The grand finale. For fuck's sake. I'm going to miss that. Needless to say, 92% Rotten Tomatoes. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure everyone's having a fucking great time. But there's too many films to watch. We're coming into, guys, the most exciting season to be a cinephile. Autumn, winter season. It's the mid/post festival pre-awards season. Let's fucking go. If you're going to buy an Odeon Limitless or a Cineworld Unlimited or a fucking whatever, do it now. Because now we as a FOF family are going to be seeing 2 films a week, 3 films a week, 4 films a week, 5 films a week. What? Thank you for joining me for Fred Asquith on Film, aka Fred on Film. I will be back next week with the aforementioned reviews. Please send in any questions or queries via my Instagram DMs. Lots of love.